now it begins.
No. Now it ends.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back for the final Game of Thrones Season 8 plot leak video. Today I will be reading Season 8, Episode 6, and this one looks like it's not as detailed as some of the other episodes. There isn't as much dialogue between the characters, and there doesn't seem to be as many scenes, but I'm guessing it has something to do with everyone being in the same place in the end. Now that I'm done uploading these, I plan on making another video where I give all my thoughts on everything that happened. I will tell you what I liked and what I didn't. I will also tell you how much of it I think could actually happen next season. But for now, let's just get into the video. The opening scene begins in Cersei's chambers. Jaime is still clutching Cersei's lifeless body in his arms. There are tears in his eyes and on his cheeks. He continues to hold her and look at her. Jaime gives Cersei another kiss on the forehead, then he carries her body and lays her down on the bed. Daylight is beginning to break through some of the clouds as a light flurry of snow begins to fall. Jaime wipes the tears off of his cheek and out of his eyes. Then he begins to make his way back outside. When Jaime exits the room, he looks at Qyburn's dead body laying on the floor in a pool of blood. As Jaime steps around the corner, he is startled by what he sees next. Euron Greyjoy is gone. Jaime had knocked out his teeth with his golden hand and drove Bronn's dagger into his chest. He left him lay there to die, but now he's not here. There are a few teeth in a small pool of blood, and the dagger is there too. Someone must have took his body for some reason, or God forbid, he is still alive and he escaped the city. As more and more light comes through the clouds, everyone can see just how much destruction was caused last night. King's Landing looks like a smoking ruins. Everything is burnt black with smoke rising from piles of rubble all over the city. There are multiple fires burning still, from the dragons and the Wildfire. Almost all of the Lannister men are dead, but some of them did choose to lay down their arms in the face of the dragons. All of the survivors are looking around in disbelief. They never expected the capital to look like this. The Hound walks back up to the top of the wall to see his brother. Some of the wildfire is still burning around the Mountain's body. Most of his armor is melted into the stone. There is nothing left of the enormous man that was once known as the Mountain that rides. No one knew about the amount of wildfire Qyburn had stashed down in the cells. Because it was so far below the ground, the dragonfire that torched most of the buildings was never able to reach it and set it all off. Daenerys and Jon walk up to the doors to the throne room, and Daenerys enters while Jon looks on from the doors. Daenerys is finally looking at the Iron Throne she so desperately tried to win back for her family's name. Now, the Iron Throne resides in a city that is completely destroyed. Daenerys walks up to the throne and looks at it for several moments, but she loses all interest to take a seat, so she walks back over to the doors. When Daenerys exits the throne room, Jon asks her what she plans on doing with it now. Daenerys says she wants it burned. Melt the chair down. King's Landing will no longer be the capital of Westeros. Daenerys said she wanted to break the wheel entirely. We have all sacrificed too much for us to allow this vicious cycle to continue. We can't have one person ruling all 7 kingdoms while they sit on the Iron Throne. So Jon has a few pots of wildfire brought into the throne room. They melt it down to the ground, into a puddle of liquid iron. Everyone gathers back outside, and they all decide that they're going to travel back to the Trident first. They lost a lot of good men and friends on the battlefield. They want to give them a proper burial. They load everyone up on the dragons and they head for the Trident. When they get there, it looks even worse than when they left it. Tens of thousands of bodies are laying in the dirt and snow. They begin walking through all the dead bodies, looking for loved ones or close friends. They eventually come across Varys and Kinvara's bodies first. Both of them had been burned alive during the battle, most likely from Viserion, or so they hope so. Daenerys wants Varys taken with them. He stayed loyal until the very end. They also find Jorah Mormont and Beric Dondarrion's bodies next to each other. Daenerys begins to cry when she sees her closest and oldest friend laying dead in the snow. Jorah Mormont had died while he tried to stop a White Walker from throwing its spear at Daenerys and Drogon. Daenerys says Jorah should be returned to Bear Island to be with his family. And they also discover Tormund and Grey Worm. They died during the attack on Winterfell, but they were turned into whites, and they were amongst the rest of the Night King's army. Their eyes are no longer blue, so they carry their bodies over to the rest until they can decide how they will lay them to rest. As they are walking across the battlefield, everyone stops when they hear wolves howl in the distance. Arya turns around and looks off into the tree line. There is a massive pack of wolves watching them all. After a few moments, Nymeria walks to the front of her pack. Arya and Nymeria look at each other, then Nymeria howls, and the rest of her pack begin to howl with her. Arya smiles as the pack disappears amongst the trees. This makes Jon think of Ghost. He hasn't seen him since the Night King attacked Winterfell. Jon tells everyone to start to load up so they can head north. Some of them volunteer to take the bodies back to the ships Theon had, and the others board the dragons to fly back to Winterfell. After the dragons take off from the Trident, the screen will go black for several moments. When the next scene begins, they will be in Winterfell, and several months have passed since the last scene. Winterfell is still in very bad shape. The Godswood were mostly destroyed, and the castle was burnt. The walls are badly damaged and crumbling in several areas. It will take a very long time to rebuild most of the Seven Kingdoms. Daenerys is visibly pregnant by this time. She is actually ready to give birth any day now. Jon and Daenerys have a long talk about how they want to handle things moving forward. They hold a meeting in the hall and they allow everyone to voice their opinions with how the Seven Kingdoms should be ran in the future. They all take a vote and decide that each kingdom should be independent, with its own council to rule over a certain amount of territory. There will no longer be one king or queen ruling the kingdoms, nor will there be one person overseeing their own piece of the kingdom. They take another vote and decide that Daenerys and Jon should oversee everything together until Westeros is stabilized again. Kingdoms and castles need rebuilt. New crops need to be put in place for harvest. They will need to vote on who will stand in as the first set of counselors over each kingdom after they are restored. Gendry is legitimized as a Baratheon in order to protect one of the major houses of Westeros. They offer Gendry his family's seat of power, and they will help him vote on a set of people to oversee that area with them. Gendry says he will stay in Winterfell first, until the North is restored again. Jaime and Tyrion are offered their family's seat in Casterly Rock, under the same terms. Both of them volunteer to stay and help see the other kingdoms restored first, before they go anywhere. Jon tells his family that once Winterfell is restored, he will be leaving and heading south with Daenerys. They are going to be raising their child together on Dragonstone. Jon also tells them he wants to marry Daenerys before she gives birth to their child. Jon wants Sansa, Arya, and Bran to stay in Winterfell together. Unless they want to leave, they are free to do whatever they please, but he would hope that a Stark will remain in Winterfell. Jon and Daenerys will wed in the Godswood in a few days. Even though the Heart Tree is destroyed, Daenerys says she wouldn't mind a traditionally northern wedding. Jon will go down into Winterfell's crypts to see his mother and Ned. When Jon is down there, he will be reunited with Ghost. His direwolf had fled the castle after everyone escaped, but he came back to the empty castle and stayed down in the crypts until everyone returned. This will be a very emotional scene for Jon. He will look at Lyanna's statue as his mother for the first time, and he will reunite with his direwolf, which he considered could have been killed during the attack. Sansa and Brienne will have a discussion about Brienne's duties. Sansa relieves her of her vows. She tells Brienne she is free to go home if she would like. Brienne says that if Jaime is staying to help, then she will stay on a little bit longer too. Brienne and Jaime will both offer their swords to Sansa. Jaime says ice should have never been melted down into Lannister swords. He gave his sword to Brienne so she could find you and your sister and keep you safe. Jaime says he has the other one, and he's no longer a competent swordsman anyway. The swords belong in the North, with the Starks. Sansa tells them both to hold on to the swords while they are there, continuing to help. Bran Stark begins to get very sick. He is no longer having visions, and ever since the Night King was defeated, he hasn't been feeling very well. He gets very weak and seldom leaves his room. Now that Bran Stark has served the big purpose, his powers are starting to fade away, and it's weakening his entire body. It will be very similar to what happened to Jojen Reed in Season 4. Theon and Yara both decide they will go back to the Iron Islands. Ever since Jaime said Euron's body was missing from the Red Keep, they fear Euron could show up again and try to start some kind of an uprising. Euron is badly wounded with no men or fleet, but he is still a very dangerous man. Theon and Yara set sail to the Iron Islands with the few remaining Ironborn men that lived. Sam and Gilly are also set to wed. Sam also wants to give Little Sam his last name. Daenerys and Jon tell them they can return to Hornhill whenever they want, but they both volunteer to stay and help before they go anywhere. The North took the most damage since it was directly in the Night King's path, so they could use all the help they can get. The Hound also decides to stay in Winterfell for the time being. In one of the last scenes, Daenerys goes into labor. Sam and Gilly both assist her where they can. Daenerys will give birth to twins, one boy with dark hair like Jon's, and one girl with silver hair like Dany's. She will survive the pregnancy and birth. Both babies are given the Targaryen last name, and after Daenerys recovers and is able to leave, they will go back to Dragonstone to raise their children. The last scene will show the last hearth and the card hold being rebuilt. Winterfell will be almost restored, and most of the snow has melted away in the far north. There will be people tending to their crops, and people building farms where they will keep different animals. The fishing villages are lively again, with different types of fish getting packed into barrels of snow and ice. The people of Westeros are trying to build a more civilized place to live, but will it last for long? Alright folks, that is the end of this plot leak. There are a few things I want to say before I sign off. First, I just want to say I did enjoy reading this and seeing everyone's reaction to it. Even if it is fake, I still had some fun doing this. I also wanted to point something out to some of you. I noticed some people leaving some comments on the previous videos where they were voicing their concerns because they felt the plot leak left out too many things, and in their mind that means it's all fake. Well, I just have to say that happens with pretty much any plot leak. You will never find a plot leak that has every single detail. It's just not possible. I don't know how many of you read the plot leak for Season 7, but that one ended up being 100% accurate, but it didn't have very many details at all, and it left out tons of scenes. It also didn't add any context to most of the things that it did have. But with that being said, it was still accurate with all the things that it did have. So just keep that in mind when you are wondering why this one didn't mention this person or this one didn't mention that person. Just because it might not have mentioned a certain character doesn't mean it's all wrong. Go back and read the Season 7 plot leak and you will see it's all correct. But some of the episodes only had one scene. It might have left out tons of details, but what it did have was true. I also have to say I noticed some of you saying it wasn't bitter enough to be a bittersweet ending. But I guess that all depends on which characters you value, or how you see the series as a whole. When you think about all the great characters that have died over the course of this series, and how families and great houses were completely ripped apart and gutted. So many loved ones were lost, and major houses were reduced to nothing. All of Westeros had pretty much turned into a battlefield, with death all around them. If this would happen to be true, we would lose Tormund, Grey Worm, Beric Dondarrion, Jorah Mormont, Varys, the Karstarks, and Umbers. Plus, it looks like Bran Stark is about to die, and there are no signs of the Starks producing an heir, which means the Stark name dies when Sansa and Arya do, and I think that would really suck. But I still have to say, I do not believe all of this will happen. Some red flags were raised while I read certain things in this one, which I will go over when I make that video. I think there are several things in these episodes that will happen, but there are also some things that just don't seem very likely in my opinion. If you have any questions about the plot leak, leave them down below because I planned on answering some questions in the next video too. Thank you all very much for coming along on this ride with me. Even if you think it's fake, I hope you were entertained in some way, because at the end of the day, that is very important to me too. I also want to give a shout out to all my wonderful Patreon supporters. Some of you have never wavered, and I really appreciate that. Have a great day everyone. I will see you again very soon. Bye.